So it's finally been announced, Williams have renewed Logan Sargeant's contract for 2024. After a very disappointing 2023 season for him, Williams have decided to keep Sargeant on for another year alongside Alex Albon in the hope to at least consolidate their 7th position in the constructors' standings. But considering all the accidents and disappointing performances this year, it's seen as a very controversial decision and a very bold statement by James Vowles in his quest to haul Williams back up the grid and transform them into race winners again. Now the thing is, as an outsider, it's very easy to look at this whole thing and say, sack him, he's rubbish, he hasn't been doing well, get someone in who's got more experience, blah blah blah. And I think ultimately that's what 90% of people are saying. But I'm going to stick my neck out here and say I'm going to go with Williams' decision to keep Sargeant on. I think they've made the right choice, and here's why. So first things first, let's get a few things out into the light of day. Sargeant had a very disappointing and unlucky at times rookie season. He was out-qualified by his teammates at every single race, he managed to yield just 1 point compared to Albon's 27, and he amassed a repair bill approaching $4.3 million. And when he did keep his car on track, he wasn't exactly blowing away the competition either. You would normally find him knocking around the bottom quarter of the grid and maybe sometimes 11th or 12th place. Now fair enough, Albon was getting all the upgrades from Williams, so naturally we would expect him to be quicker with a higher spec car and then combine that with his experience. But it's just all the crashes that he's had, and some when he was actually in quite a decent position as well. There were calls throughout the media saying that he should be dropped ASAP and that Williams are wasting their time. So first year, on the face of it, not great. But James Vowles has done a fantastic job as Williams team principal since he joined in 2023 and has made all the right moves so far. So you can argue that a level of trust has built up so that if Vowles does make a decision, it is seen as the right one. And obviously time will tell, but I think in this case Williams knows something that we don't. Vowles and Williams have said that they do see a quality in Sargeant and that they are trying to extract this and bring it to the circuit. Now what this quality is, I'm not sure, because from what we've seen in his rookie season so far, something is not translating from what Williams see in the telemetry and what we see on track on the TV. If he was beating Albon in qualifying, putting in some stunning drives and still having these accidents, you could argue that there is some potential in there, but a few creases need to be ironed out still. And I think this is what it all comes down to, potential. And I think there were at times where we did see some decent drives from him, particularly at the British and Singapore Grand Prix and also at Texas where he scored his first points. Now this was on a technicality because Hamilton and Leclerc were disqualified, but a point's a point. But this all helped Williams in securing that valuable 7th place in the Constructors' Championship and that extra $30 million in prize money. So at least now there's more money to put into developing a more competitive car that is easier to drive. Also, Williams are happy with the data from Logan's driving and simulator work, but this hasn't been converting to on-track performance. So is it a case of some fine-tuning and sharpening things up? Because if so, now is the time to do it. Williams seem to be in a really good situation right now because it appears that their owners, Doralton Capital, are giving them the time to turn things around and pull the team back up the grid again. There isn't this boiler room mentality of we need results now, yesterday if possible, which leads to poor snap decisions and often long-term mistakes. But why is this? Do Doralton Capital have sunshine in their hearts and racing in their blood? Or are they just coldly building up their Williams asset for them to sell it later on? Well, who knows? But right now, Williams are blessed with time. Time to assess, time to improve, and time to learn. Something that their competitors just don't have. I think we'll start to see the proper effects of Vowles' team principle throughout 2024 and 25, as his changes come into play, particularly the signing of Pat Fry, which is huge for Williams and a real statement that they are on the front foot. Also, in the process of assessing Sargeant as to whether he's worthy for a new contract, there would have been a lot of factors at play, particularly the driver market. Now, throughout 2023, when everything was still undecided, it would be pretty naive to assume that Williams didn't have their feelers out in the driver market to see who might potentially be available. This isn't a bad thing, they would just need a contingency plan. But the thing is, any drivers that would have been in Williams' reach would have already been contracted for 2024 or just not interested. And there wasn't really a wealth of decent free agents out there either. Names like Liam Lawson, Mick Schumacher and Nick De Vries were thrown around, but Lawson was already tied up with Red Bull and I don't think a season-long loan at Williams really would have been helpful for them. Mick really wouldn't be an improvement over Sargeant and De Vries just wasn't up to the job after being dropped by AlphaTauri mid-season. And apart from those, there wasn't really anyone else notable after that. Latifi and Grosjean probably left Vowles a few voicemails though, unanswered obviously. seriously. It's only once you get into junior and reserve drivers that possibilities start to open up. Frederick Vesti was a possible contender after shining in Formula 2 this year. And we also saw Williams run young drivers O'Sullivan and Colapinto in the postseason young driver tests. And this is really where I kind of start to agree with Williams, because unless you're kind of seeing a real young driver prodigy, there is little point replacing Sargeant with a complete unknown who will have to transition to a Formula 1 car from an F2 car and learn all the systems and develop this new driving style. And like it or not, Sargeant already has a full season under his belt. Whilst he has his faults, they're known faults, and I'm sure at this stage that Logan and Williams know what they need to do to come together and overcome it. But let's flip it around. Let's say that Williams replaced Sargeant with Vesti for the 2024 season. Who's to say that Vesti would transition to F1 better than Sargeant has? I mean, he might do, but it's not something I would bet the house on. In addition to this, like other drivers, I think Sargeant has fallen victim to the ever-widening gap between Formula 2 and Formula 1. The gap from Formula 2 to Formula 1 is now enormous, and what young drivers need to succeed in Formula 1, they're just not getting that from Formula 2. It looks like the feeder series system is not doing the job at the moment. The finger also needs to be pointed at F1 as well, because gone are the days where guys like Hamilton and Alonso in their debut season could just rack up endless miles of testing and just hone their skills and get on top of the car. In contrast to yesteryear, new drivers are now pretty much expected to jump in the car and make all their mistakes and learn their lessons on the circuit, on the race weekend. It's like, imagine learning to play guitar or piano in front of hundreds of thousands of people, making all your mistakes in front of everybody. It's kind of similar to what these young drivers have to go through now. So bringing this back to Sargeant, all he's had is just race weekends, a couple of tiny bits of testing and simulator work, which really doesn't kind of cut it, I don't think. But I know what you're thinking. Oscar Piastri made his debut this season as well and absolutely shot out of the blocks. He did a fantastic job. And you're absolutely right, he did. But the thing is, he wasn't rushed into F1 at the same pace that Sargeant was, and he had a year's worth of reserve driving at Alpine. And also, he had guys like Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon to draw from as well. It may not seem like much, but it's made a huge difference. Furthermore, whilst Logan is not a paid driver, it would be silly not to assume that Williams' owners, Doralton Capital, who are an American company, would have some preference in having an American driver in one of the seats if at all possible. I know it's not strictly ethical to consider or the correct thing to do, but it wouldn't be the first time that this has happened in Formula 1, nor would it be the last. Also, remember, Sargeant did a great job qualifying 6th for the Las Vegas Grand Prix in front of his home crowd. So it'll be really interesting to see if his support in America grows if he finds himself scoring points on a regular basis. But so far after the signing, Williams have been a little bit quiet on the details of which Logan has been retained. So far in relation to his signing, we've just been told that Williams has retained him for 2024 and that they look forward to working together for the future. That's kind of about it. They haven't gone into any details regarding his contract or anything like that. But I would not be surprised if there was some changes made to Logan's contract so that Williams could kind of cover themselves a little bit should he have another poor season potentially. Maybe his pay has been adjusted so that it's more on a results basis. Also, I imagine there will be a keen eye on him this year and a potential replacement waiting in the wings just in case things don't work out. I really hope they do work out, but you just have to kind of prepare yourself. But if this shows anything, it's that Williams want to do things differently to other teams, to have some humanity and integrity about them. They don't want to do it like Red Bull and co and just switcheroo drivers whenever they feel like it. They are building these new foundations delicately and carefully, and just making sure that they keep on the same drivers for the following year just makes everyone's lives at the team a little bit easier. It's one less unknown and one less thing to worry about. Plus, with Pat Fry on board and an increased income from prize money and sponsorship, it will be really intriguing to see what Sargeant can do with a better car. In the 23 season, Williams effectively had a dragster. It was very effective in straight lines and low downforce tracks, but suffered immensely in the high downforce, twisty-turny style circuits. And this led to the car being very twitchy in corners and quite hard to handle, and this is where Sargeant was making most of his errors. So hopefully now Williams can deliver a car so that we can see what Albon and Sargeant can do at every single race and not just fixate on a certain type of circuit. And another thing, and this is a major factor, that he just seems like a nice, humble guy who has a bit of self-awareness about him. Also, it appears that the people at Williams do like working with him, which is a load more than you can say for a number of other drivers on the grid and their teams. No, really, of all the accidents he's had this year and all the bad luck and everything combined, nobody has really had a bad word to say about him as a person. Sure, people have been critical about his driving after he's made a mistake, but we've never had times where we've had other drivers on the team radio complaining about his driving, saying he's getting in the way, things like that. Nor has anything been filtering out to the press from inside Williams. There haven't been any indications that people are fed up with him or that he's rubbing people up the wrong way. He just comes across as very human, and we've seen how disappointed he gets in himself when he makes mistakes. And that is the critical part. It's not about the car, it's not the tyres, it's not the setup or whatever. It's himself. He's made the mistake. And that mentality alone is essential to what Vowles needs to rebuild the team from the ground up. This is thinking ahead a bit now, but Albon is still unconfirmed for where he's going to be in 2025. So if he does go elsewhere, it will be such an advantage to Williams to have Sargeant embedded in the team so that they can have a stable platform and then search potentially for a replacement for Albon. I really hope Albon does stay beyond 2024, and I hope Sargeant performs as well. So come 25, I really hope Williams don't have to have that position where they have to search for two completely new drivers again. And let's not forget as well, Logan was very rushed into F1. Having barely scraped together enough points for his super license, it's fair to say that he was introduced into F1 well before he was ready. And whilst this was all done by the previous team principal, Jos Capito, fair play to Vowles for giving him a real fair crack of the whip in 2024. Some might say that this is a real chance for him, and some might say that this is a final chance. And if Logan succeeds and starts scoring points on the regular basis, it will be seen as a stroke of genius and excellent talent management from Williams. Overall, I'm very happy that Sargeant has been renewed because it solidifies Williams' new direction and their objective to rebuild the team in a manner that is not just a quick fix solution. It will take time and it might be a slow process, but overall I have a good feeling about Sargeant in 2024. And whilst I'm sure that he will deliver, he must know in himself that he has no other option but to. So there we go, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please be sure to like, share and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you later. Cheers.